From understanding medical history to revealing distant relations, knowing family ancestry can be life-changing. But for many Black Americans, tracing family history means confronting lasting gaps left by slavery. Often people are deterred before they even begin. One organization is trying to change the barriers and misconceptions about finding your roots with a famous example of what can be found. Habemos Papam. When those words were first shared from the balcony in Rome back in May, the excitement of a new pope, the first American pope, was felt across the world. As people scrambled to determine allegiance of the Chicago native-born Robert Francis Prevost, Cubs fan or Sox. What was quickly revealed was Creole roots and an expansive narrative about Pope Leo's family history.
My mother was from Louisiana, as I said. When I grew up, there were 3 pictures in the living room, only 3. Jesus Christ, John F. Kennedy, and the Pope. And if she were alive today, she'd have a heart attack and fall down dead to be connected to the Pope in any kind of way.
Judge Raymond Moore is at the American Ancestors Family Heritage Experience on Newbury Street in Boston for the unveiling of an exhibit about Pope Leo XIV's ancestry. He's gathered with genealogists who were contributors to the project called The Ancestry of Pope Leo XIV, an American Story. Judge Moore is not a professional, just the keeper and steward of his family story, and now the connection to the pontiff.
The best way I can say it is a double fifth cousin.
Judge Moore grew up in Roxbury and then the Cathedral Projects in the South End. A Yale Law graduate with a legal career in Colorado, genealogy is something he's been doing on the side for 40 years, inspired by his uncle, Gilbert Lamel.
Once I showed some interest in it, he started sending me stuff kind of nonstop. He and I had slightly different interests. He was chasing the European roots. I was chasing the African. Based on what is in the exhibit, I am connected to the Lamel line, which is, as you get deeper and deeper into it, it becomes Dabion. Marie-Jeanne Dabion is a slave / woman who had children with a white man who owned her before he freed her.
Jari Honore was one of the contributors to the project.
I work as family historian at the historic New Orleans collection, which is right in the middle of the French Quarter. I think that the connection to Pope Leo has excited everybody in New Orleans. New Orleans is such a city that values history, values genealogy, that is heavily Roman Catholic. And so I think people are just thrilled that we claim such a strong link to Pope Leo.
Ryan Woods is the president and CEO of American Ancestors, the oldest organization dedicated to the study of family history.
So what we did in the research on Pope Leo XIV was to serve as the convener to bring genealogists together, both from American Ancestors as well as the Cuban Genealogical Club of Miami and genealogists in New Orleans, who were able to bring together what is really a global story on the ancestry of Pope Leo XIV.
That research showed Pope Leo's ancestry across oceans and identities, as Lourdes Del Pino, vice president of the Cuban Genealogy Club of Miami, found.
My role was basically piggybacking on what Mirelis Peraza did, finding the Pope's Cuban branch of the tree, finding the documents for that Cuban branch, which led us to the Spanish side, the Spanish branch. And that was great because that is the line that takes us the furthest back in time to the early 1500s in Spain.
Both Honore and Del Pino are researchers for Henry Louis Gates' Finding Your Roots program on PBS. Gates was granted a private audience with the Pope to share his family tree. Gates is on the advisory board of the 10 Million Names Project, an initiative of American Ancestors. The 10 Million Names Project is an initiative of American Ancestors to recover, restore, and remember the names and family histories of the cumulative 10 million men, women, and children of African descent who were enslaved in the United States.
The institution of slavery was perpetuated in part by breaking apart families and suppressing identities, treating people as property. And that created unequal access for people who are interested in their family history.
The project will help people move beyond oral histories and provide documentation as they digitize records for people to search.
To show the diverse ancestry of the Pope is something that is uniquely American, that there are both stories of universal human experience, but also specific stories that show the richness of that family. And to have now a global leader who has ancestry that is European, African, that is white, that is black, freedom fighters, enslavers, and enslaved people, that it shows this global connection and this richness of history, and you're able to learn more about the world in which we live and those events that have shaped it. And so having someone with such a national and international profile that has this diversity of background is an incredibly powerful example of what family history can demonstrate.
The ancestry of Pope Leo XIV, an American story, will be on display at American Ancestors through December 31st. Go check it out and maybe get started exploring your own family history. Making sure family heirlooms are owned by the family. The historic move from the Museum of Fine Arts to restore ownership of an enslaved potter's work.